In my book, I talk about how there's a sadistic ignorance that comes with women. And on the flip side, for men, there's usually a masochistic indifference. And they become indifferent to their own masochism when they're not integrated in their shadow. It's the same type of thing with women. For example, women, when they're not integrating their shadow, there's going to be this ignorant sadism and sadistic quality to themselves where they derive pleasure from putting pain on other people, and men will derive pleasure from putting pain on themselves. It's almost like the men will be actually more in their maturity, become a little bit more sadistic. Not that it's good to be sadistic, but women in their maturity will become more masochistic. They derive the pleasure of pain when it's from themselves. Like there's a sense of pleasure that they get when there's pain that is given unto them or being put onto them. They like that. And it's a very strange thing, but it's a fine line to cross, and it's a fine line to set in the sand, so to speak, as well. But I bring this up because there are many men who are walking away from women right now that is causing women to wake up. You see, women are fearful of being left behind. They're fearful of abandonment and trauma, you might say, that comes with that. Whereas with men, we fear more being used for our resources or used for whatever we have. We will give everything if it means that they're happy and they're safe and provided for, the ones that we love. We will give it all, just to make sure that they are okay. Whereas with women, they would prefer to take it all. That's why women, you hear in the divorce courts and such, that women will take half the house and like, well, maybe not half the house literally, but half the things inside of it or half the money or whatever, is because they don't want to leave without getting something. They fear this abandonment that is coming, even though they're the ones causing the abandonment most often, because something like 75 to 80% of divorces are caused by women. And out of the people that do get married, 50% of those are going to end in divorce. So you might look at it as about 40% of the population is going to get divorced, and it's because of women. Whereas 10% of the population is going to get divorced, and it's because of men usually. So women generally are not even happy with their relationships. And one of the reasons being is because we're in a society that is so catered toward women that it's so freaking obvious. It's so obvious once you get out of the matrix, so to speak. And I use these terms loosely. Okay, it's come to my attention that there are many men who get hyper emotional around these terms as well as these kinds of topics. And I implore you to be mindful of your logical side here. And we as men, because women are so hyper emotional, we in a way have to be hyper logical. And it's not to say that we ought to be completely cold and calculative. However, we've got to be more calculative when it comes to this kind of thing and recognize that it's not anything personal. Pretty much anything that a woman does to you is not personal. It's just for her own survival. And this is why you can't really blame women for the things that they do sometimes. But at the same time, you can't treat it as nothing either. So don't treat it as personal, and recognize that most of the time, women, you're better off just not listening to them. And I know that's going to trigger a lot of people, but 99% of the women out there are not worth listening to. And the 1% that are will actually give you, reasonable, wise counsel, because they are attuned to their own intuition. they're attuned to themselves. They're not trying to be something they're not all the time. They actually have accepted themselves to some degree, to the most part. And it's always because there's a man who has a positive mindset in her life. Women, I genuinely think that women cannot be happy unless there's a man in her life who's happy. I don't think that it's possible because there's spiritual laws that are in place that are otherwise. And we have to remember that, again, women are our shadows to some degree. They're miniature versions of us men. And so the more men who are willing to wake up and walk away from these women, the more women are going to be able to wake up and see why they're walking away. It's going to take a minute, and it's going to cause like a software glitch update for them. I mean, some of these women you'll see on TikTok and Instagram and all that, they will literally glitch, like, yeah, I don't. And it's really crazy to watch because they don't know why men are choosing not to commit to them. And they don't know why their behavior is resulting in these kinds of consequences and outcomes. They literally don't know. And so the only thing that we can do as men in order to ensure that there's some kind of understanding is that we must see in a righteous way that there are qualities about women that make them completely ignorant to their own peril. And we as men have to recognize this and adjust accordingly. Otherwise, there will be hell to pay, not only for us men, but also for the women. And whether you like it or not, the women around you are your women. And the men around you, for maybe any ladies watching this, are your men. The men around you are your men. It's up to you to decide how you want to treat these people and why you want to treat them a certain way. And so we live in a precarious state right now where everything is very upside down, and the whole institution of marriage is destroyed, in my opinion. And I don't see how it can be transformed for the good at this point. I just don't see it. I think that the only way, because there's a lot of men who still want to have a wife and family and kids and such, and I honor that and I understand and respect that and revere that. However, at this point, I myself am to the point to where I don't really see the point in marriage. And it's not to say that I don't think marriage is a good thing. It's like, legally speaking, I don't see why you would want to get the government involved. And I also don't see the reason of why you would ask an emotional being, such as a woman who is hyper emotional, to ever make a vow to you. Why would you ever do that? Like, isn't it kind of unreasonable to ask an emotional creature to make a vow to you? Like, she's either just going to do so because she genuinely can't feel like she can live without you, or she's not. And you have to always make sure that you're in your frame as a man. You have to make sure that you're the one who put the crown upon your own head. Otherwise, because if you make her think even for a second that she was the one that was able to help you dig your crown out of the dirt, and out of the gutter, oh my gosh, I've never seen it end well. So you have to be mindful, you have to be careful, you have to be alert, conscious, and aware of why these things are happening the way that they are. And again, women are sadistic when they're ignorant, and they're going to be very, very ruthless. Okay, they are hyper emotional beings, so they will move on as quickly as possible if it meant that their survival or they had a better life. In a video recently, I said that women will bury you alive if it meant their better life. I mean that. They will bury you alive if you need to. And someone said in one of the comments that on that video that it was one of their mothers, like their mother was like that. And I understand what that's like. I understand because I haven't talked to my family for years because of this in many ways. And I wish nothing but the best for these people. I don't wish them ill will, especially my mom, of course. But I had to face the facts. And, everybody says the mother knows best. That's another piece of crap advice for the society. Mother does not know best. Like, it's like Tangled. Have you ever seen Tangled? I just thought about this. Remember the evil narcissistic mother that hides I don't remember her name. Is it Rapunzel? Yeah, Rapunzel hides Rapunzel in the tower, because the narcissistic mother is like, mother knows best. It's like, that is essentially the archetype of every person that says mother knows best. They're just maybe expressing it in a way that's hyper charming so that you accept this, when in reality it's one of the worst things that could possibly happen to you. So you've got to be mindful of this, and you have to be careful, because now there's nothing wrong with loving your mother, of course. In fact, I would say that your mother is probably going to be the only kind of woman that could love you unconditionally if she's capable of, and I don't even unconditionally, I don't really like that word, but she's capable of loving you for who you are. She's going to be your mother is the only woman who can potentially love you for who you are. I would say that that's, generally speaking, very true. And again, I mean generally. And I was thinking about this yesterday because we had a Bible study in the Regal Change Academy on Wednesday night. And there was someone in the group who said that the generalities generate reality. And that really opened my mind to something, because I was thinking about how generalization, okay, what's a generalization? Well, these are general realizations to generate realizations. And so when you can generate realizations for the collective consciousness, when you have generalizations for people, that means that there's going to be some kind of form of, collective consciousness does not really care for realizations sometimes, because it's painful. It's painful to see the truth, because the illusion just gets shattered. And I've seen many men behave with this way, and that's why they're walking away from women more than ever. And that's why women are either waking up or they're just falling more deeply into sleep. And I pray for these people, because we're at a point to where, of course, I love our species. I love what we're doing as human beings. I love that this is who we are. Like, we're doing so many great things, and I'm very optimistic about the future, but I'm also a realist. Okay, I see the way that the intersexual dynamics are working today. It's not going to survive. I see the way that the fiat system is influencing relationships. It's not going to survive. Okay, I mentioned this in a post yesterday about silver, and silver has gone up exponentially, like 50% within the last month and a half or so, if not even a month. And what does that say? Well, usually it says that the monetary system that we're using is on its last legs. And if you think about all the credit card debt and all the student loan debt and all this stuff that we have in our societies, specifically in the US, because that's where I live, is in the United States, you start to see how it's like you can only put off the inevitable for so long before it pops itself. It's like a bubble that will pop eventually. The bubble can only get bigger and bigger, bigger, until eventually it's going to pop. You can do whatever you want to try to make sure the bubble doesn't pop, but it's going to pop sometime. And the longer that you wait for it to pop, the more you're borrowing from future generations. And that's exactly what we're already doing right now. We're already borrowing from future generations. And you can see it. The resources for my generation and the generation after me, they're already being used up. It's essentially, you remember in the Matrix, the movie The Matrix, where they're all plugged in and they don't even know that they're plugged in. They're just born that way and they're already being siphoned for their energy. Uh, Hello, spiritually speaking, that's what's happening in real time. As you're watching this video, this is something that's happening in real time, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse the more time goes on until that bubble pops. And so silver is the correction base that I see for the market right now. Is there going to be a correction in silver incoming? I don't know. It kind of seems like silver is just going to go up and up and up like a rocket ship. But how long? I don't know. And what's it going to crash to? I don't know. But it's difficult to say these things. But why does this have to do with intersexual dynamics and relationships? Well, because a lot of people don't understand this stuff. And it's going to play a factor in how healthy the relationships are. You can tell a lot about the health of a relationship by the health of their finances in the relationship. You know, even if you're in a tough spot financially, if you can understand that it's a process, the other person is going to be there with you, especially if they have the willingness to take heed to any type of thing that is going to propel them to a better place. But unfortunately, a lot of these people out here, especially women, because women have the most credit card debt. They have about 80% of the credit card debt in the United States, women. And that's just unbelievable. You know, it's unbelievable, especially considering that about 48% of the money that's being made is by women in the United States. So women make 48% of the money, and yet they have 80% of the debt. You know, the numbers don't lie. This is one of the reasons I like the financial number side of things, is because the numbers just speak for themselves. And of course, like, maybe you can make terrible decisions or, you know, accidents and all that. But if you can have a plan to execute to bounce back, you know, it's something that is very important for your well-being and overall sustainability for life. You know, this is something that we just have to understand more. We just have to recognize that this life that we have, this is it. You know, some people believe in past lives and such, and I think it's possible, but I think what really matters is this life. And so if we can recognize that this life is worth living and it's worth giving it our best shot, even if it means that we have to sacrifice ourselves in some way, shape, or form for the greater good, especially as men, because women can't do this. Women can't do that. It's going to be the men that can do this. Okay? Think about the Titanic. Freaking horror movie. What a terrible horror movie that is. You know, it's like when you watch the Titanic, if you're in a lovey-dovey mode, oh, it's great. But if you're in realistic, man-logical mode, you're like, what the fuck is this? This is a fucking horror movie. It's the worst movie ever. Like, it's the worst story. This is crazy. Because what happens is essentially the men all die. Like, the men all die. Spoiler alert. Like, the men all die and the women live. And then the women, they throw away everything that the men in their lives did for them explicitly. And it's like, this is why women don't make good leaders. Women, generally speaking, don't know the difference between being a C word, okay? It rhymes with blunt, okay? And then being a leader. They don't know the difference. So us as men, we have to know the difference. We have to be more emotionally intelligent, and we have to be more socially intelligent. We have to be carrying that leadership qualities in us so that we can be part of the greater good for society. And with all that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful for you. Maybe give you a different insight on certain things. I hope that you all have a blessed day. Peace always to everybody out there that is seeking the truth and living the truth. And peace until next time.